Hi there. Today's lecture is going to be on how to build major scales. We've touched on this in the past. We've mainly focused on our five-finger patterns, but today we're going to add 3 more notes to that to come up with the complete scale, which is from one note, like a C, to the same note an octave higher, the higher C, and all the notes in between that make up a major scale. When we have made our five-finger patterns in a major key, we have followed the pattern of whole, whole, half, whole. In order to complete the major scale, we're going to add 3 more notes, and the configuration is whole, whole, half. I prefer to just think of the entire scale instead of starting with a five-finger pattern and adding 3 more notes. And when we look at it that way, we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So I would like today to build a few major scales by keeping that configuration. So I will put the first note down, and then I'm going to ask you what comes next, and we will draw that. So I'm going to give you a second for you to think about the pattern in the whole scale before I add the next note. So we're going to start with C. As we know, different scales start on different notes, but they will follow the same pattern of whole and half steps. And as we have discussed before, we have our tonic note, which is the home note. It's the note that we get back to when we're playing that feels like we have arrived at home. So every note we have 12 keys on the keyboard, and on each one of those notes we build a major scale. So let's start with C and see what we come up with. All right, first of all, we have the letter C. What is the next note that we're going to have following our whole, whole, half, etc.? From C, what is our next note? We're going to need a whole step, so that would be D. From D, we need another, what? Whole step, right. So that will be the letter E. Now from E to the next note, how far do we go? Right, a half step. So this will be our half step. Now from our half step, how far do we go? We go another whole step, right. So from F to G is a whole step. What is our next one? Yes, from G to A is a whole step. And our next one from A to B, correct, another whole step. And our last note is going to be, what is the distance? Half or whole? Correct, it's a half step. So if we go back and look at our pattern, we see we have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now something that we can observe in this pattern is, where do we have our half steps? We have our half steps between scale degrees 3 and 4, and between scale degrees 7 and 1 or 8. From one C to the next C. Everything else is whole in between. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Or as some people like to say, waffle, waffle house, waffle, waffle, waffle house, which I still like. Waffle, waffle house, waffle, waffle, waffle house. Okay, let's practice another one. As we see in the C scale, we have no sharps or flats in order to achieve this pattern of whole and half steps. But let's try another one. Let's go up a fifth from C and start on the letter G. So here we have G, and now let's see what we come up with. From G, what is the next one? A whole step. So we have G to A. What's the next note going to be? Correct, a B, another whole step. Now we need a half step, whole, whole, half. There's our C. Let's have another one. From C to what? we go back to a whole step, because as you see from scale degrees 3 to 4 is our half step. And we're going to have all other whole steps except between 3 and 4 and 7 and 1. So here we have G, A, B, C, D. We need another whole step, correct? Yes. And now we need another whole step. That will be our F. How do we make a whole step from E? Is it going to be F? No, that's a half step. So how do we create a whole step? Right, we have to make the F a sharp to create our whole step. Now we're back to G. And what is the distance between 7 and 1? Correct, a half step. So we have, let's see if it's the pattern we just had with the key of C. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. There we go. Okay, so now we see we have one accidental, which is an F sharp. So this is going to take us into the next topic of creating key signatures. Because instead, someone had asked me a long time ago, why don't we just put all the accidentals by the notes in the music? And as you recall, we were saying that when you get into keys that may have multiple sharps or flats, it would be way too confusing and really difficult to read if you had sharps or flats written all over the piece. So we solved that by coming up with an order of sharps and flats, or flats for the different keys that allow us to read the music easier, and we wouldn't have that. So in this situation, we have F sharp. And so we're going to now start an organization or an organized pattern of how to arrange the sharps or flats on the staff. So for this one, we're going to place an F sharp right on the F line. And from now on, whenever we're playing in this key of G, where G is our tonic, we no longer will see this F with a sharp on it. It will look like an F, but we have to remember, because of this F sharp at the beginning of the piece, which is right to the right of the treble clef, we will always have to play F sharp. Let's do one more. Let's go up from the key of G and let's do the note D. D is going to be our tonic. Where do we go? How far do we go up? We go up a whole step, right. Then from E to what makes another whole step? Is it F? No, we've already determined that we need an F sharp in order to have a whole step. Now from scale degree 3 to 4, what is that? Correct, a half step. We'll just circle that to help remember where our half steps are. Now we need another whole step. So that will be the letter A. We need another whole step. That's the letter B. We need another whole step. From B to what is a whole step? Is it C? No, that is a half step because they are right next to each other. So to create a whole step, what do we have to do? Correct. We have to make that C a sharp. And now we're between the scale degrees of 7 and 1, and that is D. And of course, I started filling all of these in. So the way we're going to identify where our half steps are between 3 and 4 and 7 and 1. So this time we have two sharps. In our configuration or organized way of writing key signatures, which we will be talking about in the next lecture, we are going to have F sharp as our first sharp, just as we had with the G scale. And now we're going to have to add another sharp, and that will be the C sharp, and it will be right here. So now every time we're playing in the key of D, where D is our home note or our tonic, we will now have to play an F sharp, and we won't see it in the music, and we will have to play a C sharp, and we won't see that written next to the note either. But we have to look right here to see what notes will be sharp or flat. Okay, so we're going to end this session right here in talking about how to form a major scale. But you can look on page 70 and you will see that you will find all of the ways that you form a scale based on sharps and flats in order to keep that configuration. Okay, and so now I will end this session, and next time we're going to talk about key signatures and how they look on the staff. See you next time.